For today's lesson, we're going to use GCF factoring and zeros to solve polynomial equations. Looking at today's lesson preview, as a reminder, when we use intercepts to graph a function, we would let the x value be 0, in which case for y equals 8, y is equal to 2. When y is equal to 0, we let 2x equal 8, or we will have x is equal to 4. So 0, 2 is 1 point on our graph, 4, 0 is another point on our graph. When we're solving equations, the zeros that fall on the x-axis are going to be the solutions of our equations. If we look at f of x, which is the factored form of a quadratic, x plus 3 times x minus 1, we find the intercepts. You will see there are 1, 2, 3 intercepts. The y-intercept occurs, remember, when x was equal to 0. When x equals 0, we had 3 times negative 1. So the y-intercept of 0, negative 3 makes sense. The other answers that you see have the points 1, 0 and negative 3, 0. Notice that if I take x plus 3 and I set it equal to 0, that's going to be where my y equals 0 and my x has a value. If I take the factor x minus 1 and set it equal to 0, you know what? That's where the y equals 0 and again, x has a value. So if we find the intercepts of our factored form of the quadratic, we're going to find solutions to our equations. So for example 1, we have x minus 4 times x plus 2 equals 0. When I look at the quadratic made by that graph, notice my two answers where we cross the x-axis are negative 2, 0 and 4, 0. With that in consideration, look at our factors. X minus 4 equals 0. Well, that tells us that x is equal to 4. And if we take x plus 2 and set it equal to 0, that gives us x equals negative 2. So if we want to take an equation that is quadratic, factor it, and figure out where each factor is equal to your 0, you're going to be able to find solutions. All right, so look at your graph. Expect the answers to occur where your x is equal to 0 and where your x is equal to 1/2. Let's see if we can find them. The directions are factor to solve. I notice that 4x squared minus 2x both share a 2 and an x. If I factor the 2x out, that's my GCF. Now what remains? 2x minus 1, and that equals 0. Okay, so I have two factors. One of them is 2x. I'm going to take that factor and set it equal to 0. I'm going to take 2x minus 1 and set it equal to 0. When I divide, x equals 0. When I add 1, divide by 2, x is 1/2. And notice, these are the solutions that we were expecting. For example 3, we're to solve this equation. Notice it's a binomial times a binomial. It's set equal to 0. The answers that I'm going to expect to get are x equals 1, and some answer between 1 and 2, but I'm not really sure what it is. Let's see if we can find it. It's already in factored form. Notice that I have two sets of parentheses. So if I take the first factored form, x minus 5, and set it equal to 0, and my second factored form, x minus 1, and set it equal to 0, 3x equals 5, x equals 5 over 3. I think we just found that missing answer. So the answer was 5 over 3. So notice the graphs are very nice, but they don't always give us the easiest way to find a solution. All right, so for example 4, it looks again like I have some answers, but they might be hard to find. So if I set this equation equal to 0, and I factor out my negative and my x squared, there's my GCF, I'm left with 2x minus 5 equals 0. So negative x squared must be equal to 0, and 2x minus 5 must be equal to 0. So let's see here. something squared equals 0. So that must mean the x equals 0. And for my other problem, 2x equals 5, x equals 5 over 2, and it looks like, oh, there's no way that's 5 over 2. Do you see where the mistake occurred? I factored out the negative, but I did not change this one. It needs to be a positive. There we go. Now, we have two solutions, x equals 0 and x equals negative 5. So give questions 1 through 4 a try. Number 4 has something sneaky going on. Let's see if you can figure it out. So what is the difference between solving and factoring? To solve, that means we're looking for the zeros or the roots of an equation. And your zeros or roots are your x-intercepts of an equation. An equation has an equal sign. So these are examples of problems with equal signs. To factor means that we're going to write equivalent expressions using terms that multiply to get our simplified factor. For example, 20 is 2 times 2 times 5, or 2 squared times 5. Notice for the second problem, we're taking out the GCF, and we have y squared plus x minus 1. This third problem is a trinomial, and when it is factored, it is the multiplication or product of two binomials. So when I ask you to solve a problem, you will notice there's an equal sign. If it wasn't set equal to 0, you need to change it so that it's set equal to 0. Once your problem's been factored, then you can take your factors and set each of your factors equal to 0. Afterwards, solve for your problem. If you have 2 factors, you probably have 2 answers. If you have 3 factors, you might have 3 answers. When I look at number 6, do you see how it was set equal to 0? Now I'm ready to factor. Take out my negative 4, z squared. There's a GCF. What do we have remaining? We have a 1 plus 2z. Notice I didn't make that mistake with my negative this time. So z is equal to 0, because that's where 4z squared equals 0. And 1 plus 2z equals 0, which tells me z is negative 1/2. So this is called your zero product property. If you have 2 factors equal to 0, then either the first equals 0 or the second one equals 0. So in order to use your zero product property, you want to solve all the polynomial equations. You set the equation equal to 0, factor completely, set each factor to 0, and then solve each factor. All right, a special problem called the vertical motion problem. We have the height in feet of a projectile motion, and it can be represented by h of t equals negative 16t squared plus vt plus s. T is time in seconds, v is the vertical velocity, and s is your initial height. So, a startled armadillo jumps straight into the air with the initial vertical velocity of 14 feet per second. So the v is 14 feet per second. How many seconds does it land on the ground? Now hold on. The height on the ground is 0, so that's something to keep in mind. So let's write our equation. H of t equals negative 16t squared. The velocity we were given is 14. Keep the t. I don't know s. S is your initial height. Hold on. The armadillo jumps straight into the air. So he's on the ground. Your s is 0 to start with. Now I want to know when the height is 0. 0 equals negative 16t squared plus 14t. Factor out a negative 2t, and I'm left with 8t minus 7 is equal to 0. So either t equals 0 from the first factor, or t equals 7 over 8 seconds from the second factor. Now, t equals 0 is when your armadillo is on the ground, and 7/8 is when the armadillo lands.